Good morning, DayBreak, and welcome on Mother's Day to this time of online worship. It's a privilege on Mother's Day for me to introduce to you Jack. Jack. See if you can figure out why they call themselves J-A-K-K.
I'm Jen, and currently I'm hiding from my children. Motherhood has put me both physically and emotionally in the most pain I've ever been in. It's brought me the most joy. It's surprising and confusing. It's so joyful. And it's terrifying. Ow! But here's the thing. Motherhood is all of those things for me. But I think that each of those moments, the ones that I want to forget about or throw out, or the ones that I want to find a way to remember and keep forever, all of those things are the sum total of what motherhood is for me and who I am as a mother. Because they either drive me to be a better person, they make me a better person.
Hi, I'm Alicia. I am wife to Kendall and mom to Hope, who's going to be turning 5 next month at the end of May. So Pastor Tim sent an email requesting a quick little video about Mother's Day during this particularly odd time we're all having with this COVID-19 pandemic. So here it is. So during this time, being a mother, getting ready to celebrate Mother's Day during COVID-19, I would say I'm just most grateful for my ability to be home with Hope. We're really fortunate. My work is on hold right now. I'm a portrait photographer, so I'm just able to stay home and be safe and healthy with her. We're just really, really grateful for that and for this time that we're able to spend together and able to spend with her. That's not to say that it's not without its challenges. There are obviously some very trying moments, I think, for everybody during this time. There's such a strange mix of emotions, I think, that come with dealing with such uncharted territory, such as a pandemic of this nature. And I think as an adult, there are so many confusing emotions and feelings, and just processing that can be really difficult. So to try to help a child process similar emotions when their level of understanding is so different, that's been really difficult. Trying to explain to Hope why she can't hug her grandparents, or see her friends, or why she suddenly can't go to school anymore, or why she can't have a birthday party. Some of those things might be seemingly small to an adult, but for a child, those are really, really big things. And so with that comes a lot of confusion and just mixed emotions from her. And so just helping her through that and helping her to process that in a healthy way, it's definitely presenting some challenges. I would say it's also difficult on the personal level, that I almost feel as though I'm always mentally on for her right now. I feel like there's so much less time for a break than before. We're in the house, obviously now, thankfully, the weather has turned and we're spending so much time outside. So feeling a lot less cooped up, which is wonderful, but the routine is very different, and we're at home, the days start to feel the same, and that can lead to some moments for everybody involved. So yeah, there definitely have been challenges as we navigate this and move forward with the information that we have, uncertain about certain aspects of the future. Definitely not without its challenges. I will say that there have been a lot of really special moments that have come out of this, and I think it's really important in life to acknowledge when something is difficult, and when you're feeling sad or frustrated or angry. I think it's really important to take the time to feel those feelings, but I also like to approach life trying to make the best of it and trying to find joy in the situations that we're in. And I feel like we've had so much fun doing small things that maybe we wouldn't have done before. Certain crafts, even ideas for crafts or activities or little family dates at home that maybe we wouldn't have had the idea to do before. I think I look forward to walking away from this period of time, being able to look back at some fond memories and some special times that we have pictures of. We can show Hope, we can remind her of, hey, do you remember that time when we couldn't leave the house for how long? And we made that awesome fort, that kind of thing. So I think that where there are challenges, there's also really beautiful, special moments, and I'm really grateful for those, and I think that we're making some special memories, and I'm going to choose to hold on to those. So yeah, as for breakfast in bed on Mother's Day, I'm not a huge fan of breakfast in bed, but I'm sure it will be well taken care of. But yeah, thanks for watching.
So this year I am particularly grateful that I am a mother. Joe and I struggled with infertility and tried for 2.5 years before we were able to conceive our daughter. And she was born in November, so this is my first Mother's Day with her on the outside, and so I'm really thankful for that this year. My most enjoyable part of motherhood is just watching her grow. She is almost 6 months old, and just being able to see all the ways that she has grown and changed already in such a short time is amazing and wonderful, and I'm just looking forward to watching her grow and seeing who she's going to become. I think the least enjoyable part is the amount of worry that it brings and how it can be stressful to watch and try to figure out what is going on, especially if she's not feeling well and things like that. So that would be my least favorite part of being a mother. And I would say, because Joe read the email about breakfast in bed, that maybe I should expect it. So thanks, Tim, for that.
Hi everyone! For those who don't know me, my name is Candace Boyd, and although Pastor Tim warned us that this was coming, I didn't think it would be so soon for myself. First off, I'm coming to you today from my office. I actually showered, I did my hair, I put on some makeup. I'm still in sweats though, like, let's face it, I need to keep the expectations low for when we all emerge from this. Pastor Tim sent me and a few others a list of questions to answer for a video for the Sunday broadcast. Questions were all centered around motherhood and gratitude for things we have enjoyed or learned about motherhood, especially during this time. I'll be 100% honest. The day I received it, I was not in a good place. I was not in a good headspace. I wasn't in a good heart space to even look at this. I was on day 6, I think, of kids having meltdowns, some of them lasting in excess of 2 hours. And me feeling like I was barely holding things and myself together. The last thing I wanted to do was a video answering, what are you particularly grateful for as a mom during this COVID-19? Or what do you love most, about being a mom? In those moments, I found it even difficult to go there. So sorry, Pastor Tim, I'm throwing that script out the window and doing my own thing. I hope you understand. As Mother's Day approaches, I've been thinking a lot about this crazy relationship we mothers are in. I watched a video the other day that resounded with me, and it said that being a mother is complicated. Yeah, it's complicated. I mean, if I was to put my relationship with my kids as a status on Facebook, it would say it's complicated. Is there joy in every moment? No. Do you still love every ounce of their being? Absolutely. Do you crave a moment of silence away from the monsters, angels? Yes. Do you immediately miss them or think about them once they're finally gone? Yes. As crazy as it is, we do. Do you question every decision that you make as a mother? Especially because Karen from Facebook said not to do it that way. Yes. But do you make decisions that are best for your kids at that particular moment in time, no matter what Facebook moms say? Yes, we do. See, it's complicated. Now, add in a pandemic. The complication just grew exponentially. See how I did that? I'm teaching the girls about exponents right now. So now we're teachers, on top of everything else in our life. That seems not too bad until you look into the layers of complication that it adds. Kids do not want to learn from their mom. Insert kids' meltdowns. And put some yelling and screaming, I'm guessing, if your house is anything like mine. We might also be dealing with mental health issues. I have 2 kids with mental health diagnosis. So insert meltdowns now. So now we've got those first 2 things that I mentioned, and it leads to sometimes moms being called names, accused of things, having the kids be very disrespectful. And as much as we want to understand that this is coming from a place of frustration and anger, it hurts. Sometimes it just hurts. Insert mom meltdown. Moms like me also still have a full-time job and they sometimes, like me, are self-employed. We're just trying to hold our businesses together during this time on top of everything else. So now I'm done my schoolwork as a teacher and I've come downstairs to work. Oh, but the kids are fighting. So now I have to go be a bouncer. My work seems to be done now in about 17-minute increments, maybe less. Then we've got Facebook telling us, let the kids be kids. They're very stressed. Go for a walk, go for a bike ride. Don't worry about it. Then we have the schools telling us, your kids need routine. They need something to look forward to. They need to be on a schedule and they need to keep up. So what is it? Then we have dads, God bless them, that are going out to work every day and they're coming home to stressed kids and stressed wives, and they just don't know how to help with it all. And we don't know how to tell them to help. We're all just so lost in it all. And this leads to frustration between spouses. And then we see Instagram and Facebook moms that give us this false sense that everyone has it all together, or that mom has it all together. And then we start comparing ourselves and go down this terrible rabbit hole that we are not doing the best that we can. And on top of all of this, we're being told you need self-care, you need time to yourself. But where? When? We're not able to find space. We're not able to find time. Everybody needs us right now. All these things add up and make motherhood even more complicated during these times of COVID. We love our kids. We love being parents, but it is hard. Some days we may feel like we might break. It's complicated. So this Mother's Day in particular, I encourage you to lift up moms all over the globe that are living hour by hour, day by day, week by week, just barely holding it together. We want to see the joy. We want to express gratitude. We know that will help. But some days, sometimes, we just can't. Because we're in that rough week, that rough day, that rough hour. And it's complicated.
Our thanks to each one of the young moms from our congregation who has shared so openly and so candidly with us this morning. Thank you for being a part of our congregation. Thank you for being my personal friends. And may each one of you today listen as closely to your husbands as that cat was listening to Alicia. I think some of you are aware that I have several book manuscripts in various stages of preparation for publication. This one we are hoping will be out for Christmas time this year. I completed the manuscript while I was on sabbatical, and then our legal team ran into some major issues involving copyright matters, and suffice it to say, I've learned more about copyright issues than I ever wanted to learn. But this morning I wanted to read to you from the chapter in God is Loser Friendly on the Old Testament character Rebekah. And I think you will find this a bit of a change, and I hope it will be interesting as I share in two parts this morning a chapter called Rebekah. She's good with camels, not so great with children. Welcome to my thinking corner, otherwise known as Tranquility Bay. It is here that my younger brother and I regularly convene to hatch ideas as to how to amuse and, yes, sometimes how to trouble Christendom. Nearby is my faithful editorial assistant, Mika, even now dreaming up new ideas to pass on to readers and viewers. She just turned 16 years old. We named her Mika after the Flames goalie back in the 2004 playoffs when we first got her. The title of my book, as I indicated earlier, is God is Loser Friendly. And today I want to read on Mother's Day from chapter 7, titled Rebekah. She's good with camels, not so great with children. Each chapter of my book begins with a citation from the works of one of my favorite writers, Anne Lamott. And so this first paragraph comes from one of Anne's books, and I'm indebted to her for her willingness to allow me to use it. Quote, "My mother almost never cried. Her parents were English, so the Kleenex in her purse weren't to wipe tears, and she had drowned in those uncried tears. Uncried tears syndrome left my mother hypervigilant, unable to settle down into herself and, to use the clinical term, cuckoo." Unquote. I had never heard of it until a few years ago. It is labeled Parental Alienation Syndrome, PAS, and it generated considerable controversy across North America for a time in the late 1990s. In Alberta, where I live, a judge transferred custody of a 4-year-old boy to a mother who charged that her ex-husband and ex-mother-in-law had maliciously turned her son against her and that the boy was suffering from PAS. In British Columbia, Canada, a woman who denied her husband access to their daughter for 2 years lost custody of the 9-year-old girl when lawyers successfully argued that the girl was similarly suffering from parental alienation syndrome. Dr. Richard Gardner, a researcher at Columbia University, New York City, says children can be brainwashed by a custodial parent into developing an irrational animosity for the other parent. Interestingly enough, the professor claims, women are responsible for 90% of serious PAS cases. I therefore cannot help but think Rebekah may have been the initial founder of the Parental Alienation Syndrome Association when I read about her in chapters 24 to 28 of the book of Genesis. That's because it is readily evident that she was a master of manipulation, with a distinct ability to promote alienation in her own family. I would not have wanted to have been in this lady's bad books because, for whatever reasons, she clearly had a few axes to grind with certain family members. I encourage readers to check out Oprah Winfrey's insightful production titled Greenleaf, available on Netflix, which lifts the lid on the mischief in a pastor's family in the American South. For several reasons, Rebekah kept coming to mind as I watched the work of the actress who plays the role of the bishop's wife in that revealing series. Rebekah's mastery at scheming, can we call her a schemist? Not a chemist, a schemist. Rebekah's mastery at scheming is part of the reason why I am sincerely puzzled by Christian parents who choose to name their daughters Rebekah. Really? Have you actually read the entire story of Rebekah as conveyed in Genesis? I will confess, I have occasionally been known to politely tease some parents when they inform me, their pastor, that they consider Rebekah in the Bible a good role model for their new baby. To this, I sometimes respond, "Alrighty then. So Rebekah is portrayed in Genesis as quite adept at watering camels and assorted domestic chores. But when was the last time you actually read the rest of her story? What do you see there that you want your daughter to emulate in her life? Which part of Rebekah's demeanor as a wife and mother jumped out at you from the pages of Genesis, whereby you thought it a responsible act of piety to saddle your precious little girl with that name for the rest of her life?" Selah. On occasion, my long-suffering parishioners have reconsidered and hastened down to the Department of Vital Statistics to change the baby's name to Delilah or Rahab. You're right. I probably should be reported to the appropriate ecclesiastical authorities for discipline. Rebekah is another character from Genesis that seems to have a long history of being considered a suitable role model for Christian females. I grew up with several girls by the name of Rebekah and have met many others throughout my life who are so named. In point of fact, however, even the hastiest reviews of her story in the few chapters of Genesis where she appears indicate that Rebekah leaves much to be desired when it comes to the desirability of some of the personal character traits she demonstrates. Nor does she come across as a paragon of what it means to live life with a meaningful faith in God. The primary point of my drawing attention to such a reality is not merely to beat up on Rebekah or on well-intentioned parents. Rather, it is to focus on yet another prime example from Genesis of the fact that God is loser-friendly. By now, you should be beginning to see a bit of a pattern that emerges in the first chapters of Scripture in that regard. God chooses and God uses people who are every bit as fallen, human, depraved, dysfunctional as you and me. In fact, we might be justified in advancing the prospect that at times God appears to severely limit himself because of the foibles present in the lives of the quirky individuals in Genesis that he calls to help effect his eternal plan and to function as his public relations team. The only viable reason to be offered by way of justification for this puzzling characteristic of the Almighty is to underscore that he is a God of grace. He does not choose us because of our merit or for our spectacular skill sets. In short, we are seriously lacking with regard to living up to his lofty standards. Are you beginning to see the portrait that emerges in Genesis? It's not about you. From the opening chapters of the Old Testament, not just as evidenced in the life of Jesus Christ and so vividly sketched in the New Testament, the God of the Bible is first and foremost a God of grace who chooses and loves people despite our skills at failing him. Whatever readers of the Bible choose to do by way of attempting to accommodate the traditionally difficult sections of the Old Testament, where God is portrayed as unreasonably angry or inhumanely judgmental of mankind's faults, that needs to be undertaken only after giving adequate allowance to his grace that is portrayed over and over again in the very first book of the Bible, Genesis. Some encouragement for anyone acquainted with parenthood. Since I graduated from seminary at Christmas 1984, I have witnessed what I believe church historians in years to come will document as some very crucial alterations in North American society. These, in turn, have had a profound influence in the implications for effective ministry in parish life. One of the areas in which change has occurred, in what seems to me to be an almost 180-degree turnaround, has been with respect to domestic life, marriage, family, and parenting issues. Many of the familial assumptions that a pastor could make when greeting visitors at the church door following worship services back during the era that I emerged from my theological training simply cannot be made today. Trust me on this. I have won the Golden Foot and Mouth Award far too often over the past 4 decades to have my judgment questioned on this assessment. In my early days in pastoral ministry, I could safely assume that the unknown man, woman, and 3 children standing in front of me as they departed following worship constituted what was traditionally called a nuclear family unit. Any pastor making such assumptions today will soon qualify as a contender to imminently dethrone me as reigning champion of the Golden Foot and Mouth Award. How many times in the late 20th or early 21st centuries has my face turned crimson as, in response to my efforts simply to be friendly to newcomers following worship, I have heard, "Oh no, this one is his son and these 2 are my children," or a similar explanation regarding the identity of the children in the group. Further, on this topic, I will simply celebrate that I am also finally starting to comprehend that just because a person today is sporting a wedding band does not guarantee that any conclusions you make in that regard will necessarily be accurate. In an era when families are upended, mended, blended, and resplendid, let's now attempt to identify what there is of value that can be salvaged from what we see in the life of Rebekah as she is depicted in Genesis. And here's the first point, if you will. A mother's role is one of the most important and difficult of tasks. Do you think? A mother's role is one of the most important and difficult of tasks. Salute to all you mums on Mother's Day. It is common every spring around Mother's Day to encounter news articles or business reports reminding us of a mother's value to society in economic terms. Because we live in a capitalist world, in gold we trust, it often takes seeing a mother's worth spelled out in terms of dollars and cents for it to appropriately register with us just how essential the role is that mothers have in our society. Valerie Young speaks to this in an informative article that appeared in Brainchild magazine. Quote, "Mothers make people, and people are the most basic economic element. Babies are consummate consumers. They grow to be producers of everything. Without children, there is no economy and no future. We know that the value of family care to elders saves public spending and, if compensated, would be worth around $450 billion US per year." Did you hear that, moms? Did you hear that, people? We know that the value of family care to elders saves public spending and, if compensated, would be worth around $450 billion US per year. Mothers' unpaid domestic labor actually adds between 4 and 8.5 trillion US dollars to the economy every year. Unquote. Wow. Pay attention the next time the mother of your children mentions that her invoice is in the mail. Here's another perspective on the topic that humorously but accurately encapsulates mom's imperative place in the life of a family. I won't read all of these, but here are 52 job titles a mom holds on any given day. Mothers, start nodding your heads. Number 1, CEO of the household. 2, personal chef. Clients may consist of picky eaters. Number 3, head cheerleader of Johnny's team. 4, housekeeper. 5, taxi driver. Don't expect to receive any tips either. Number 6, judge mom, daily court appearances. Number 7, PhD in anger management. Number 8, hairstylist, mostly consists of impatient clients. Number 9, bedwetting patrol squad. Number 10, keeper of secrets. Shh, I won't tell. Number 11, food tester. Number 12, family therapist. Intervention at least once a week. Ooh, intervention. Still editing. Number 13, toddler wrestling coach. Number 14, errand runner. Number 15, laundry machine operator. Number 16, janitor. Number 17, teacher, specializing in nursery rhythms, ABCs, and 1, 2, 3s. Number 18, toy repair expert, fixer of the little parts. Number 19, finance manager. Number 20, art director. Remember, beauty is in the eye of the beholder. You get the idea. She lists 52 titles that mom assumes in any given week. I will let you add a few more jobs required of moms from your own unique experiences. What is of particular import here is that, as with any mother, there were myriad responsibilities and expectations that would have been placed on Rebekah. She was the mother of twins as well, with all the additional challenges that reality presents. So before we begin to critique Rebekah, it is useful to pause and at least give her the courtesy of recognizing that being a mother is a most demanding task, and that contrary to what popular capitalist society would have us believe, it is a responsibility far more important than we usually acknowledge. Do you think parents living in Rebekah's day ever had to put up with listening to their children complain that there is nothing to do? Or is that just a phenomenon of the modern era? When our children were young and would predictably lament the lack of adequate entertainment options, I would sometimes take them by the hand into the family room and show them a well-stocked bookcase, a computer, one of several televisions attached to which was any number of Sony, PlayStation, or Nintendo consoles. We would then proceed into the garage where an assortment of bicycles, snowboards, rollerblades, cleats, skates, and numerous pieces of equipment for every sport imaginable were to be found collecting dust. I would then declare to them, if I hear any one of you again complain that there is nothing to do, I will personally package you up in a wooden crate containing an active hornet's nest and return you to your manufacturer via the bumpiest ox cart ride you've ever experienced. Are there any questions? All parents know with certainty that their role is not an easy one to wisely carry out. Are things any better or any worse today than the frustrations faced by parents in the days of Isaac and Rebekah? I will gladly permit each one of you to address that question. That is because of the contents of Genesis 25, verses 22 to 23, where we read that Rebekah was not even permitted to wait until her twins were toddlers before she was schooled as to the meaning of sibling rivalry. She was informed by the Lord while Esau and Jacob were yet in utero that she was essentially nurturing the founding members of World Wrestling Entertainment. Do you think she slept well after coming home from her initial ultrasound with the Lord's words lingering in her ears? 2 nations are in your womb, and 2 peoples from within you will be separated. 1 people will be stronger than the other, and the older will serve the younger. So again, like I suggested earlier with respect to Sarah, we need to cut a dear lady some slack, okay? Her first pregnancy was not an easy one. Evidently, the battle line between her sons was drawn even before her water broke. As proof of that reality, Jacob was grasping Esau's heel at delivery as if to hold him back and enable himself to be born first. It was an indication that troubled days were ahead. Sibling rivalry has apparently been around for a while. It is certainly a repeated theme in the book of Genesis. Abel, Cain, Esau, Jacob, Leah, Rachel, Joseph, his brothers. Rebekah's task as family referee began out of necessity shortly after Esau's head crowned at birth. In an entertaining book titled Born to Rebel, Birth Order, Family Dynamics, and Creative Lives, researcher Frank Callaway reports evidence demonstrating that the oldest child in a family often tends to support the status quo. Those who are born later are more apt to show signs of rebellion and pursue innovative patterns of behavior. Did Rebekah have any such resources to turn to for help in trying to understand the unique temperaments of her twins? Perhaps the unique challenges of parenting twins can be seen as Esau and Jacob enter the Genesis narrative. Esau earns his father's approval and appears content to prepare to take over the family farm from Dad. Conversely, Jacob was inclined to be more of the quiet type, who hung around the house. He was ever thinking, scheming, reflecting, cooking up menu items, including how he might creatively outsmart his older brother and seize the birthright that he had already made a bold attempt to earn at birth. No doubt mothering these two would have been a most challenging task. So again, let us hasten to give Rebekah an A+ for effort. We're going to take a pause here, and Darren comes to us with some music.
Surround me with a song of deliverance from my enemies, till all my fears are gone. I'm no longer a slave to fear. I am a child of God. I'm no longer a slave to fear. I am a child of God. From my mother's womb, you have chosen me. Love has called my name. I've been born again into a family. Your blood flows through my veins. I'm no longer a slave to fear. I am a child
Thank you, Darren, for your contribution. Hey, Mom. This morning I'm trying to encourage you from the story of Rebekah by reminding you that your role, as important as it is also very, very difficult. So God bless you for your efforts. As we continue in the story of Rebekah, I think this story also reminds us that a mother's influence is always powerful. A mother's influence for good, a mother's influence for evil is very, very powerful. Genesis 25 verse 28 advises readers that Isaac and Rebekah each had a favorite son. As previously mentioned, Isaac's preference was for Esau, a skillful hunter, apparently because Isaac had a particular appetite for wild game. On the other hand, Jacob enjoyed a close relationship with his mother, Rebekah, possibly because he seems to have been more domestically inclined. Beyond this small amount of information, however, we are left to speculate as to how or why this set of parents allowed family relationships to deteriorate to the point they did. The first real insight we are given concerning the lives of the twins after their birth begins in chapter 25, verse 29, where we find Jacob manipulating Esau out of the latter's birthright, that culture's traditional means of giving legal priority to the firstborn male. Esau returns famished from a strenuous hunting trip, his hunger likely enhanced by the aroma of the stew that Jacob was preparing. Here is that hunger motif that I observed back in chapter 3 in the life of Abraham, when we noticed his indiscretion. Now you know why food experts advise us not to shop for groceries just before lunch and dinner. That's how and why and when poor decisions are made. Esau's hunger renders him particularly vulnerable to Jacob's scheme. Beyond the fact that Jacob masterfully manipulated his older brother's appetite in order to swindle Esau's birthright, there are a couple of important questions we ought to ask at this point in an effort to fully grasp what ultimately transpires in this account and Rebekah's part in it. For one thing, we could be excused for concluding from this story that God on occasion appears to be dependent on the deceitful and manipulative self-interests of his children in order to accomplish his overarching objectives. As we've already learned, the Lord had told Rebekah that the older twin would end up serving the younger one. Yet what are we to make of the manner in which that dynamic in Esau and Jacob's relationship comes about? I like what Marianne Thompson has to say at this point. She says this: when I look at this entire narrative, I'm not so much bothered as intrigued by the way God's purpose is hinted at. There's an acceptance of the characters, warts and all, and God chooses and works through them and with them. That seems to be the writer's main point. He doesn't need to make the characters look any better than he does. Unquote. It is perhaps at this stage in the story that some of us become uneasy. If, as we are seeing, God in his wisdom has elected to allow fallible human beings to have a primary role in accomplishing his purposes in this world, it is inevitable that at times God will appear to fall victim to the very inequities that are inherent to the humanity of his chosen instruments. That means there will be occasions such as this one when it appears to us that God uses and even blesses deviant behavior. Any attempt to satisfactorily resolve all of the uncertainties and discomforts arising from such an assertion is certain to have its weaknesses. That's why I appreciate this perspective from one of the writers who contributed to the PBS television series on which my book is based. I quote, "The whole story of Genesis, from Abraham on, is really a saga of 4 generations in a family that some today might call dysfunctional. But in the end, what we always have to get to is the larger vision of the story, that the family revolves around a covenant, and that the covenant becomes the common denominator that holds them all together and allows them to prevail and transcend. As long as they transmit that, they have vitality and a sense of purpose, meaning, and values," unquote. There's a second question that begs to be addressed in this narrative. Where do you think Jacob got the genetic inclination that prompted him to take advantage of people, kicking the other guy when he is down, and manipulating people so as to get his own way? Given what Genesis 26 verse 28 tells us about Jacob's lifestyle, it is fair to suggest that Jacob had likely spent significant time in his mother's presence. Therefore, based on Rebekah's deceitful actions in chapter 27, where she masterminds a plot to deceive her own husband so that Jacob fraudulently obtains his father's blessing, is it unfair to suggest that Jacob's penchant for deceit may have simply been putting into practice what he had often seen and heard from his own mother during his formative years? Rebekah shows no hesitation whatsoever in chapter 27 in directing Jacob to betray his older brother, deceive his father, and even to cite the sovereignty of God as an accessory to their dishonest scheme. On the basis of the example that his mother set with respect to deceiving people, can we really be surprised that Jacob turns out to be the shyster he proves to be for most of his life? A parent's influence is always very, very powerful, which is why it is beneficial for any responsible mother or father to regularly give serious thought to the matter of how we are influencing our children. Do we truly grasp the truth of the assertion that our actions ultimately speak much louder than our words? My tenure in parish life has coincided with a couple of very interesting and controversial developments in the evolution of human sexuality. On the one hand, there has been a groundswell in popular culture to accept homosexuality as a legitimate form of sexual orientation and expression. In more recent years, a lobby has similarly begun to vocalize to recognize and accept that a percentage of the population now identifies as transgender. Simultaneously, there has been a strong lobby by some sectors in society to advocate for abstinence as the superior and only permissible form of birth control for adolescents. Teenagers have been encouraged to sign covenants affirming their intention to refrain from sexual activity until marriage. For a time, devoted parents purchased purity rings for their teens to wear as a sign of their commitment in this regard. Behind this effort was a parental mindset communicating, we need to tell our young people to just say no to sexual promiscuity, just as we tell them to just say no to drugs, alcohol, and tobacco. In an age of permissiveness, parents have assumed, our young people must be taught to practice restraint. I have frequently been asked for my perspective as a pastor on these issues, and with respect to the evolution of the latter, have also been asked to promote such initiatives. I fully understand the legitimate concerns parents have along this line, for they are similar to the ones I had when our children were going through their teenage years. How grateful I was and am for the solid counsel I have encountered from wise Christian thinkers and writers that enables me to respond something like this. This is all very commendable, parents, but hey, Dad and Mom, how often do your children see you actually practice restraint? How often do they observe, not just hear, you just saying no in your own lives as their primary Christian role models? Or are you guilty of failing to set a clear example concerning the kind of restraint you are expecting and demanding from them? I recently learned that the average Canadian spends on average something like $1.68 for every dollar we earn. Now, I'm no economist, but that suggests to me that many of us are regularly succumbing to the non-stop demand from popular culture to upgrade this and renovate that. Apparently, we exercise minimal restraint before obtaining the new iPhone, a new smart TV, the latest model vehicle, or adding that midwinter vacation to that favorite sunspot, all conveniently financed on our almost maximized credit cards. It is the apex of foolishness to tell our children one thing while simultaneously practicing the polar opposite within their field of vision and hearing. We should be the first people to know that our children are more intelligent than that. Check it out in the New Testament. Jesus spent far more time talking about matters of mammon or money than he did about issues related to sexuality. Why have we so self-righteously overlooked, neglected, and or reversed this in our manner of Christian parenting? By all means, go ahead and have those serious discussions with your children about sexual matters. But better yet, how about if you model restraint for them by showing some of it when it comes to the material things that we adults find so tempting, attractive, and yes, apparently so essential that we simply must get to the store today to make the purchase. Tom Sine rightly makes parents squirm a little in this regard when he inquires and declares, and I quote, "What is the hidden curriculum in a Christian family in which the kids all have their own CD players, TVs, VCRs, phones, and when they get to a certain age, their own cars? We are raising our Christian young people with a driven, acquisitive individualism that affects every facet of their lives, including the development of their sexual behavior and their moral values. It is very difficult for the young to discipline their sexual appetites while living in an environment where their parents satisfy their consumer appetites with little discipline at all." Unquote. It is neither logical nor fair to demand and expect our young people to go without in an area as powerful as their rapidly maturing sexuality if we as parents refuse to control our material cravings and go without when it comes to caving in to society's insistence that we acquire all of the latest goodies that maternity has to offer ASAP. A parent's influence is always powerful. We can shake our heads all we want at Rebekah's poor example as a tenured instructor of bold deception. The fact remains, nevertheless, that our ability to influence our children for better or worse is every bit as powerful. Whether that influence is explicit or implicit, our children catch on to the invalidity of our inconsistencies more quickly than we may even be aware. So, Mom, Dad, when was the last time your kids, actually saw you just say no? And then, by way of encouragement from the story of Rebekah, a reminder that a mother's mistakes are never fatal to God's plans. Isn't that good to know? A mother's mistakes, or a father's mistakes for that matter, are never fatal to God's plans. Rebekah consciously taught Jacob how to excel at deceit and even had an innovative plan for every contingency. But Mom, Esau is so hairy. Jacob hesitated. Do you really think Dad is going to be fooled by our plan to deceive him into blessing me instead of Esau? Rebekah was already on it. Not to worry, son. I have indeed thought of that. As a result of her creative conniving, Jacob lied to his father, invoked the name of God in committing the deceit, and thereby expanded the rift with his brother Esau to the point where it became in Jacob's best interests to get out of Dodge. By way of consequence for her award-worthy deceit, Rebekah ends up having to send Jacob away in order to save his life following Esau's pledge to kill little brother once Isaac died. As if to add insult to injury, Rebekah steers Jacob to go spend some time under the nefarious influence of her brother Laban, who similarly held an earned advanced degree in deception. There is no clear indication in Genesis that Rebekah ever again saw the son she had so earnestly loved and so thoroughly corrupted. I therefore cannot help but wonder what memories may have haunted her as she grew old. Did she experience any remorse for how she had homeschooled Jacob? What regrets did she have in her later lonely years? Did she perhaps live to encounter self-loathing for her blatant failures as a wife and mother? Did she ever consider herself a loser as a mother, like some women I know? We are not given the answer to any of these questions in the text. Rebekah's years as a mother are left to decay like a foul aroma in the Genesis account. There is sadly very little in her record as a mother or wife that makes her a worthy example whom modern parents do well to name their daughters after. Maybe she opened a pet store in her senior years. I don't know. What is clear is that she definitely comes across as being far better with camels than with children. It is instructive to note that whereas Rebekah's nurse merits mention in Genesis 35, verse 8, Rebekah does not even receive the courtesy of an obituary from the author of Genesis. At the end of her appearance in the text, we are left to conclude and somehow reconcile the fact that God apparently uses some very curious specimens of humanity whose glaring faults in character do not, however, prove fatal to his overall purposes. Thus ends chapter 7 in my book on the life of Rebekah. I hope something that I've read to you today will be of encouragement, perhaps even of rebuke, perhaps provoke some thinking as you go about the rest of this Mother's Day. I do thank you for listening, and I'm hopeful that, like I said, the book will be ready for distribution by the fall. COVID is affecting that for some very bizarre reasons at the American-Canadian border. But God's in control, and I hope that these thoughts from God is Loser Friendly will be meaningful for you moms in particular, and all of us as Christian parents. Enjoy the rest of Mother's Day. God bless each one of you. Postscript, it's me again. Does he ever shut up? I neglected to mention that we would appreciate it if you could take just a few moments right now and scroll down to the link to our Connect card on the website. It's just below where you logged on this morning for the worship service. And if you could just fill that out, whether it's the first time you've done it, or we would appreciate you doing it actually every week, just to help us with our record keeping and keeping track of all kinds of interesting details during these times, or this time. So if you could do that, I would appreciate it. And now I'm gone. You will not hear from me again today. Is that good news or what?